Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
What? Do what?
Let the dogs out. You know, like, who let the dogs out? Who?
Off the Hook, airing on offthehooksports.com. Your home for real news, real opinions, and what really matters about Tennessee athletics. Always available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeart. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Always available wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Good morning to you and yours. He's Caleb Calhoun, and I am Dave Hooker with you for the next hour or so. Weekdays at 10 a.m. and a lot to talk about over the weekend as the Vols have a pretty big name to replace, or maybe they already have. A big list of visitors for Tennessee's Junior Day that we're going to get to, and Bert Bertelkamp, the color commentator for the Vols after that surprising loss to Kentucky, will join us. So we'll get his thoughts. I want to get to Taven Jackson, who has decided to transfer and already had a school lined up, which makes me think he was thinking of this a long time ago, maybe about the time he broke his shoulder blade. But Caleb, let's start with that Tennessee-Kentucky game before we get to a lot of Tennessee football news. Please hit that like button. It helps us grow the channel. If you haven't subscribed by now, please do that as well. So, Caleb, let's begin with this, and that is Tennessee-Kentucky. Wow, with the nation watching, had an opportunity to pound down the Cats, and who knows what could happen if that's a significant victory. And John Calipari seems to be hanging by a string, but instead the Vols gave the Cats a lot of life for a lot of different reasons. I thought the guard play was woeful, as you and I talked about over the weekend. I thought some of the hustle stats in terms of rebounds weren't great. And yeah, I just thought Tennessee, as much as anything, coming down the stretch, still in the game, lacked an awful lot of moxie. Caleb, you have a runner in the lane. It's the guy Ziegler, off-balance three-pointer as a way to try to get back in that game. There was still plenty of time to set up a play and get a score, and suddenly you're tied. And that just seemed way too complicated for Tennessee, and able to do either of those things to set up a play late. I just thought it was a poor outing overall. If we went A to F, I'd go about a D.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one thing I would say is that, like, I don't mind them not setting up a play at the end. I'm kind of a believer in that if you take time to set up a play, you give the other team time to set up their defense. And Calipari is actually a pretty good defensive coach. I do mind the play, Santiago Vescovi just running into the lane and throwing a desperation floater. Here's the thing with the game. Tennessee shot awful from three-point range. That's fine. You can live with that. You're going to have games where you're not on from the three-point line. That's okay. What you can't live with is, you're right, the awful guard play. How many missed layups were in that game? I mean, there were a ton of just missed wide open layups. And then more importantly than that, I think that, like you said, the hustle plays. It reminded me of, we talked about the Tennessee-South Carolina game in football over the weekend. And in that game, yes, there was a Jeremy Banks issue. Yes, there was the secondary was woeful. But the real story was the defensive line just took the day off. And Tennessee, that was a lack of hustle by the defensive line in that game. It's the same under the basket on rebounding in this one. Tennessee got massively out-rebounded on the boards, particularly offensive rebounds. And those were hustle plays. And where you really know they were hustle plays is Tennessee offensive rebounds that aren't based on hustle plays are usually like long bricks, three-pointers that are just bricked back to the offense. Tennessee missed more three-pointers than Kentucky did. So Tennessee had more offensive rebound opportunities, should we say, than Kentucky did. And Kentucky still dominated them on the glass there.
Yeah, they really got beat up on the boards, and I'm really not sure what to think of this team, because it should be at full strength now. There were times where Tennessee was, missing some guys. Vescovi at one point, and there were injuries that they wanted to work through and be careful with. And I know that Rick Barnes likes to toy with the lineup early on, but that was just rather bizarro to me how Tennessee didn't come out and play as well as they could have. You had the Chris Lofton ceremony as well, which, that I know that a lot of these guys probably don't remember Chris Lofton because they're 20 years old or so. But you did have Candace Parker in the house. You did have all of that, and to me, that's plenty of reason to show up, even if you didn't grow up rooting for Chris Lofton. I mean, it was obviously a big deal in Thompson Bowling Arena. So yeah, I just thought the only word I can think of is a little embarrassing, especially for the guard play and what they did not do on Saturday. I was surprised. I had that game TiVoed. I had a couple of errands to run, and somebody slipped the score in on me, and I was honestly surprised it was close with 5 minutes left. Much less, and I went back and watched it on TiVo much less the fact that Tennessee just got out hustled. If Kentucky comes out, or any team for that matter, it's college basketball, and they're just, they're hitting 18 of 22 from the 3-point line. Basketball is a sport like that. You can lose like that, but Tennessee didn't lose like that. They lost like that just from lack of hustle, and that was befuddling.
Yeah, I agree. I think what it's one of those things, and throughout a college basketball season, 30-game season, it's one of the, you're right, Chris Lofton's number being retired, your Tennessee, your number 5, all the talk about Calipari being on the hot seat, and it's a noon tip-off on a Saturday. It was just one of those games that I'm not so sure they were really that dialed in on, if I'm going to be honest. It was, and maybe that may not be a good sign for March. But you would hope that when NCAA tournament play comes, they're not going to say, "Oh, we just have to get through this game," because that was definitely, I think you saw it too. That was definitely a game where they just didn't really feel like being out there that day, and so
yeah. But that to me though is just, it's Kentucky. I don't care if you're playing Kentucky on June the 28th in a parking lot. It's Tennessee, Kentucky. I think that's a little bit worrisome for what they do moving forward. I'll be honest with you. I think that's very disconcerting.
I mean, I agree. Also, because this is a veteran team, so it's not like there's a bunch of freshmen who don't understand the magnitude of Tennessee, Kentucky. I mean, Vescovi and James have been there for 4 years. So I agree. It is concerning, but I do think it was just one of those games. Those noon tip-offs, it's like a noon kickoff in football. You don't know sometimes what team you're going to get at a noon kickoff in football. And the same, by the way, with like an 8 p.m. kickoff. I mean, we talked about it. The whole reason we think the defensive line didn't play, as you said, with their hair on fire with the South Carolina game, they spent all day being distracted by all these other almost losses, worrying about Tennessee's place in the college football playoff. And then kickoff happens with South Carolina, and they're just not dialed in at all in that game. And
yeah, that I don't understand how you're not dialed in Kentucky, even if that game's 6 a.m. But we'll talk to Bert Bertelkamp about that here very shortly. As far as Tennessee's junior day, I thought it went splendidly. Ryan Wingo, I'm told they are in even better shape, and Johnny Ringo is obviously a key pickup for Tennessee, and this is one of those two, Caleb, where you're starting to compete with the big boys, and there are going to be others like that. Tennessee to this point has had to recruit guys that they like a little bit more. They've had to recruit guys that maybe are earlier in the process. Wingo is not one of those guys. He's an anywhere guy. Here's the way my recruiting rankings work: nowhere, somewhere, and anywhere. And Caleb, he's an anywhere guy. Ron Wingo can go anywhere he wants. So some guys can go nowhere because they're not good enough. Some guys can go somewhere, and then some guys can go anywhere. So he's an anywhere guy. Tennessee still predicted to land him. I'm not saying an announcement is forthcoming for the 5-star athlete out of St. Louis, but I think that Tennessee is in a really good shape. So a couple of others I wanted to run down. Jalen McClain is one. It is very early in his recruitment, so let's see how things shape out of West Orange, New Jersey. 4-star Travaris Banks. This is probably going to be a tough one, to be real honest with you, when you have both Alabama schools on you, but who knows? I do believe that Josh Heupel will start to win some of these recruiting battles, and this very well could be one. But he's from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Alabama and Auburn are all over him. Those are typically the tough ones, Caleb.
Yeah, particularly when he's a safety, and would you rather play? Forget the fact that he's from Alabama, which you're already having an uphill climb. If you're a defensive back, would you rather play for Nick Saban or for Tennessee? Like, that is Nick Saban's specialty, is defensive backs. If that's like playing a receiver for Josh Heupel. It's like playing receiver or quarterback for Josh Heupel. You want to play defensive back for Nick Saban.
Well, true. And I thought you were going to go down the path, which is a very valid path, of you got to play 85 snaps a game. There's that too. So some new people jumping on board. Hit that like button and share. We greatly appreciate that. With the like button, we bring in more people. JJ Harrell out of Mississippi, 6'2", 185 pounds. He was in town this week. 3-star guy. I think right now people are just evaluating him. Arkansas, Colorado, Florida State are some of the schools. So we'll see. I don't think Tennessee has sent out a committable offer to this point. You have Danny Okoye. We still haven't determined if he's related to Christian Okoye, who you don't even remember, which just shows my age. But Danny Okoye is a guy that Tennessee has a great opportunity on. He's the problem with Danny is he's homeschooled, and you don't really know what to expect and what he's thought of the structure. So you have to dig in a little bit deeper. But 6'4", 241 pounds. Alabama and Arkansas have extended an offer, so they think a lot of him. With a homeschool, you've just got to really dig in, like the lower level schools, the single A's and the double A's of the world. You got to find out who he's playing, and he can be tough to evaluate for that very reason. So I thought I had Tennessee, and by the way, Travis remembers the Nigerian Nightmare. You don't. Huge running back who played for the Chiefs, followed up by Barry Word, and I'm showing my age because I'm old. But this guy could run over anybody. He had the lateral movement of me, but he could just absolutely bear down and run over anybody. So I don't know that he's related to him, but we shall check. And then the news over the weekend, and we're going to get to the rest of these visitors later in the program, and Burt Bertelkamp coming up here momentarily. But the rest of these visitors, I think Tennessee's in good shape for, still in an evaluation phase. And then your thoughts on Taven Jackson, ready to transfer, not only ready to transfer, but knows where he's going as well. Thoughts?
Yeah, I almost wanted to do a video on Friday after we did the show about this. Taven Jackson, I think this is a sign of, if I'm going to be honest, I think this is good news for Tennessee. Not losing Taven Jackson, I think it means Nico Iamaleava was that good working with the scout team over December, because Taven Jackson probably knew he wasn't going to beat out Joe Milton for the starting job, and you could live with that. I think he realized he wasn't going to beat out Nico in a year for the starting job.
I think that is exactly what I read into it. Not only is it Joe Milton's team right now, but I think with Nico on campus, you're able to see him spin it. And the guys I talk to are pretty blown away with the way he can spin it. So I believe that's exactly true. I think he showed up and he said, man, not only am I behind the 8 ball with Joe Milton for this upcoming season, but when am I going to play? He goes to Indiana, which I'll be honest with you, the brief times I've seen him and based on his recruiting ranking, I thought he could have done better than Indiana. You?
Yeah, I guess he wanted to be closer to home. He is from there. Indiana's coach is Tom Allen, who's a defensive coordinator. So I don't know who their, he's a defensive-minded coach. I don't know who their offensive coach is.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
That's okay. So and Indiana hasn't had a winning season over the last 2 years, so I'm not sure where he was going with choosing Indiana. But I will say that I believe Walt Bell is now their offensive coordinator. He coached at UMass for a while. He was Maryland's offensive coordinator, Florida State's offensive coordinator under, I think, Mike Norvell or Willie Taggart, was it? Got a decent background as an offensive coach, so maybe he thought he could do something working with him. But yeah, I think playing close to home outweighed any coaching decision of going to Indiana. I think he wanted to go back home.
I want to remind you that Zulbeer.com, that's XULbeer.com for those listening on the audio platforms, is the official craft beer of Off the Hook Sports, and also Guardian Investment Advisors. Guardian Investment Advisors is fantastic because with video teleconferencing, they can take care of your financial financial advising and your investments wherever you may be. And that's kind of the cool part about we can all video teleconference nowadays. It's we're going to see that with Bert here momentarily. But Guardian Investment Advisors, go to GIAplantoday.com to sign up. GIAplantoday.com, so you know where your money is going and why it's going there. 2 minutes, and Bert Bertelkamp of the Vol Network, one of my faves. Hang with me. This is Off the Hook Sports.
Has risen to the highest level in over 40 years, according to the April 2022 U.S. Inflation Calculator. Will your investments provide you the income you need in retirement? Are you losing purchasing power of your savings due to inflation? Simply stated, if the cost of goods and services are 8% higher and you're only earning 4% in your investments, that money buys you less of what you need. Right now is the time to act. Call Guardian Investment Advisors today.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here. I want to personally invite you to North Knoxville's newest sports bar and restaurant.
It's Big Orange Phillies, located in Black Oak Center. And yes, folks, it's happening in Halls. Big Orange Phillies offers family-friendly environment with homemade meals and the best deli-style subs around. Billiards, darts, jukebox, shuffleboard, and cornhole, and a full bar. We also offer valet parking on weekends and during special events. We even have a covered back patio. It's happening at Big Orange Phillies. We want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Chattanooga, we're at it again. For the 5th year in a row, you voted us best of the best criminal and DUI law firm.
And finalists for best law firm and best personal injury firm.
Thank you for the love, Chattanooga. We won't let you down.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Remind you that we are on Apple, Spotify, all of that good stuff. You're probably watching on YouTube right now. The app coming out here in the next couple of days, so we're excited about that. But wherever you like to listen, we are there. iHeart, all this other stuff that I'm not really familiar with, but check it out. So, but a link on my Twitter page, you can get to us wherever you would like to. Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, and one of my favorites joins us now, Bert Bertelkamp of the Vol Network. And Bert, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Dave. How you doing?
I'm well. If you could lean to your right, I believe, just a little bit so we can get you. There you are. We got him now.
Oh, you don't.
Handsome devil. You haven't aged a bit.
Well, my camera is kind of got a short wire, and I can't get it over the middle.
Okay.
Well,
that is maybe a little bit higher, and we got you perfect. Okay, and a little. Perfect.
All right. Perfect. How's that?
Perfect. Modern technology. Who would have dreamed when you first sat down to call your first basketball game that we'd be doing video teleconference technology?
Yeah, a lot of time's gone by since I started doing this. You too, Dave.
Yeah,
We've been at it a while.
yeah. I'm doing the beard thing. It's a little white. What do you think?
I think it's you, man.
I'm not sure yet, but Bert, how have you been? It's been a long time since we spoke.
Oh, I've been doing great. I've been doing great. Better than I deserve. I'm blessed. Got a good family. Got a good job. Got everything's good.
Awesome. Always love what you do in the Ball Network. I've said this before. He's one of the best in the biz. And I don't just say that because he's on. I don't say that to other people. But you kind of had to polish up something. And I'm not going to use the word, but you kind of had to polish up something on Saturday. I was really surprised to see Tennessee kind of show up flat in that game. What did you think?
Well, they were flat, and I think they probably underestimated Kentucky to some degree, hearing all the negative coming out of Lexington and the fact that they beat South Carolina so bad down in Columbia. Then South Carolina goes to Lexington and wins, and they're hearing all that and maybe somewhat distracted by the jersey retirement from Chris Lofton, which was a great scene. I don't know. Kentucky did to us what we do to a lot of teams. They smacked us in the face. They pushed their defense, pushed us out. We couldn't get into our offense. And then they killed us on the boards, and they got all the 50-50 balls. They just outplayed us, pure and simple, and we were flat. And if you go up and down the roster, the only player that really played well was Urosh. Some other people had moments, but overall we missed too many shots. But getting beat by 20 on the boards and Kentucky had 13 or 14 offensive rebounds, that's just not Tennessee basketball.
It's not. Do you think the Lofton ceremony might have been a distraction at all?
Well, it could have been. I think starting at noon is always difficult for the home team. But I don't really think Tennessee has any excuses other than Kentucky just outplayed us, and that's obviously the best game Kentucky's played all season. And they had a little bit different look without Severe Wheeler out there, and I think it affected them in a positive way. They had better ball movement. They executed their offense better, and I know in pregame I was concerned about the game. You look at Kentucky's roster, and the record doesn't indicate it, and they've lost a bunch of games they normally would win, but they still got a heck of a roster, and they got good players, and they put it all together Saturday, unfortunately.
No, they did, and there are a couple different things I want to dive into about this game, but I'm not sure why the guard play was so down. Just kind of your thoughts on what they did. They just never seemed in sync throughout the game.
Well, I think Kentucky's defense had something to do with it, and they had big guards, and Vescovy didn't have his normal game. He made a few shots. Ziegler missed way too many shots that he normally makes, and foul trouble I think had a big impact on the game, and that's not an excuse. That's just reality. We had a bunch of guys with 2 fouls in the first half. Then they picked up their third in the second half. We couldn't play as aggressively as we like to, but Coach Barnes mentioned that first thing in the post game was our guard play was not up to par, and it wasn't. I mean, I can look back and think of 5 or 6 shots that we normally make, and easy shots, and we missed, and you just can't do that in high level basketball in the SEC.
Bert, what does it say about because we all agreed Plavsic was the one who played well for Tennessee, but Calipari, now you can tell me if you think this is just Calipari playing to the media because that's what he does, but he said in the post game it was part of their game plan to let Plavsic score because they wanted to take away the 3-point line, and they didn't think Tennessee was good enough to score enough inside to win. Is that a concerning sign about the lack of respect that Coach Cal has for Tennessee's post game, or did he just say that to play to the media?
Well, I don't know what he's thinking, but our post players have played well this year, and we kind of look at it like we got 4 guys, and with Kumwa and Plavsic and Owaka, and who am I leaving out?
Adu,
yeah, Adu, and those usually 3 out of 4 play well. Well, 1 out of 4 played well, and but I can see that being a game the game plan, and we ended up 3 for 21 from the 3-point line. And the teams that have done well against us have really blanketed Vescovy and kept him from getting open looks because he wants to shoot, catch and shoot. He can score off the dribble some, but his game is catch and shoot. And the 3-pointers that we took were contested. And Kentucky's long. They build that wall, and they're like us. They've got the talent and the flexibility that they can switch on the perimeter, and they just beat us up. And they played Plavsic one-on-one. They had Sheboy playing directly behind him, and they didn't come with a double team. Most teams do and force it out, and we like to play inside out. So that's probably where Coach Cal's coming from. We throw it inside and they double team and we kick it back out for an open three. That happens all the time, and they didn't allow that to happen. Uros was able to score, but the other bigs just didn't have very good nights.
Kentucky's now 11-6, and headed into the game, there were signs at Rupp Arena, go to Texas, and all this sort of stuff. When you watch their personnel, why is that an 11-6 team instead of a much better record?
Well, I think they've had chemistry issues, to be honest. They've got good players like they always do, and they've got size and length, and they probably have not been getting as good a guard play as they need. Sheboy's been being Sheboy. I mean, his numbers are about like they were last year when he won Player of the Year. But some of their other players have just not contributed like they normally would. Toppin, for instance, and they've also had injuries in their defense. But I don't know enough about them to say for sure. But it just seems like they've been out of sync most of the season, and they aren't having any fun. And they've got a tremendous amount of pressure on them. And probably the Tennessee game relieve some of that pressure, but and they don't have the super go-to guy. Sheboy's not really a go-to guy offensively. He's more of an offensive rebounder, clean it up kind of guy, although he did make a couple jump shots. But they just haven't been in sync would be my thing, because they got the talent.
What do you think of the fans turning against Calipari, who has he's probably got 5 all-pro teams that are playing in the NBA, but only 1 championship. And we know how high their expectations are in the Commonwealth. What do you make about fans turning on him?
Well, they've underachieved is probably the biggest thing. And those people love basketball. They're the greatest fans as far as support that you can imagine in college basketball, for sure. But really, since 2015, they really haven't been a factor. They've not been to the Final Four. They've not gone deep into the tournament, and for the talent level that they've got, they've frankly underachieved. They had a really bad year in 20, the COVID year, and then last year they get knocked out by St. Peter's. And I just don't think that's acceptable in Lexington. Much like when that kind of thing happens here, people get upset. And I think coaches nowadays make so much money, they're not giving any leeway. The fans are ready to jump them, and social media, and of course Kentucky's under the microscope. It's unbelievable. You go on. We were at the SEC tournament, and a buddy of mine's son is a manager at Kentucky, and he talks about them having to have security with them because the fans want to get autographs. They want to be around the players. I mean, it's like a bunch of rock stars running around, and the fans are just crazy. So it doesn't surprise me at all. But you got to ask yourself a question: if it's not going to be Calipari, who are you going to get? Who are you going to get to be your coach? I don't know. I don't know if they're at the point of making that decision. It sounds like it'd be a pretty expensive decision, but there's clearly tension up there for sure.
Well, and he has here. If you're Kentucky, the administration and the fans, you better be careful because he has a quick trigger. I think he would be willing to leave, make a lot of money, and then he could go to Northwestern, Texas, University, State, West, East, whatever it is. And with his connections to Nike, Bert, he's going to pop up as an NCAA tournament team within a year.
Yeah, they'd probably see him again. You're right. He may. I just don't think he's going anywhere. I think it's a bunch of talk myself.
Well, I think Kentucky would be wise for him not to go anywhere, and I agree with you that he's underachieved. But the way he's got things rolling right now, he literally could go somewhere else and have success immediately. So I would tread very carefully if I were Kentucky's administration.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll see. They got tension between football and basketball. There's tension between Mitch Barnhart and Calipari, evidently. And you can't believe everything you hear and read, but there's something to it, and we'll see what happens.
Bert, sorry, I want to say on this just one more thing, but Dave and I talked last week about compared Calipari's slide to former slide in Tennessee football, and I brought up the 2001 SEC championship game. I don't think it's talked about enough how devastating that last Final Four trip for Kentucky was. That loss to Wisconsin. I just feel like the program's never recovered from that, because that should have been the best team of all time, and they never should have lost that game. And Bo Ryan coached circles around Calipari in that game, I thought.
Was that the undefeated team that got beat?
Yeah, the undefeated team.
Yeah, that was a heck of a team, and you look at the players that they've had come through, and it's incredible. But that probably took a lot of wind out of their sails. But I think the bigger thing is these, and it's not so much anymore with the transfer portal. He's got some veterans, but they're new veterans, and trying to blend these players together with freshmen and then with transfers is not an easy job anywhere. Frankly, I mean, Tennessee has the same issue. All the schools do. When you're preparing for a game, you look at the players, and it used to be you remember a guy as a freshman and a sophomore and a junior, and you watch them progress. Well, they're not there that long, and they've got all new players coming in that have sometimes been to 2 and 3 different schools, and I think that's a factor. But you're probably right. That did take some wind out of their sails, and but it doesn't affect the new players coming in. They don't know anything about it. They don't care anything about it. So, it's tough having a brand new team every year.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's neat. It's fun, but after a while, it's a little bit of fool's gold. On the flip side, you've got Rick Barnes, who develops players. He's also 68 years old. And listen, I think he's awesome for Tennessee. If he was 48, coach another 30 years, whatever you need. But he is 68. Just from when you're around him, do you get the sense of how much longer he wants to coach? Because he's evidently taking care of himself. He seems incredibly young. He's energetic. But, 68. So I'm just kind of curious how much longer you think he'll want to coach.
I think he'll coach for several more years. It wouldn't surprise me if he didn't coach 5 or 6 more years.
Wow.
I have not talked to him about it, but I just being around him, he's high energy. He never sits still. He loves the game. I don't know what he'd do if he didn't coach. I'm sure he's got outside interests, and he'd want to be with his family. His daughter lives in Austin, and she has several children, and I know he loves being with his grandchildren. But he's not a golfer, I don't think, seriously. And I don't know what he would do. And he's such a hard worker, and he's so intense. And again, he hasn't told me this, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't coach 4 or 5 more years.
Yeah, he seems like a lifer type of guy. So you're saying that Jerry Green could beat him on the golf course?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Jerry can play. He's trying to play. But yeah, he probably would beat Rick. Rick doesn't play a lot of golf.
Yeah. I don't think Rick leaves early with his golf bag, like maybe I accidentally saw Jerry Green do one time during practice.
I don't think there's many comparisons you can make between the two. I'll leave it at that.
That's well put. Bert, you're absolutely one of the best. The insight you give and the excitement is just a perfect mix. So love listening to you. That's part of the reason I planned errands and recorded the game, which I said earlier in the show. So you guys keep it up, and hopefully you're nowhere close to retirement, because you're a treasure.
Well, I'm getting old, but I appreciate the kind words, Dave. It's great to be on with you guys.
I had you pegged at 49.
49? You're close.
Yeah, you and me.
You're under, though. You're under.
Yeah, you and me are the same age. I'll be 49 in March.
No, I'm a lot older than you. I don't want to reveal it. I'm getting up there in the big numbers, up near retirement age.
Well, don't retire from the Ball Network. Have a blessed day, sir.
All right, y'all take care. Thank you.
Yeah, I absolutely love that guy. I think it's so difficult sometimes to kind of balance that between being a fan, and you can tell Bert is a fan, but being objective. And I just think that's a 1 in a million commodity. I think he is as good as they come in any sport that I follow closely. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. So it's awesome for him to make time. And if he could just play a little bit of guard for Tennessee on Saturday, maybe they would have been better off. So they'll face Mississippi State tomorrow. Do you see a bounce back game, Caleb, after the disappointment of Saturday?
I don't know if I see I don't know if I see a bounce back game. I see Tennessee winning fairly comfortably, but I would say that it might be still a little sloppy. You know, win taken out of the sails of the loss, quick turnaround, 3 days. You know, never been a fan of those Tuesday night games, quite honestly. And Tennessee plays a lot of them now that they're more of a national brand in basketball. You know, I remember the Buzz Peterson years. Tennessee was always one of the Wednesday night games because it's less prime time than it is Tuesday. But now they're always on. It seems like Tuesday night. And but I think they'll win. I think they'll win comfortably. But
coverage. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, yeah. I also wanted to give one more shout out to Chris Lofton. I thought about this over the weekend that Rick Barnes and John Calipari, the two coaches going against each other, those are two coaches Chris Lofton torched when he played them back in 2006.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds stupid in some ways, but I almost think Chris Lofton is underrated, even though he just had his number retired. From a national perspective, you know, he was one of the first. I'm not saying he was Steph Curry. He didn't take that deep a three and that sort of thing, but he had the uber quick release, which is why Steph Curry is able to get so many of those shots off that he shouldn't. He also had zero fear. Now, again, he didn't take shots from 8 feet behind the 3-point line, right? But I just thought he was, and give Bruce Pearl a lot of credit. I thought he was part of a game and part of a system that just was a showcase of the evolution of basketball. So around that time, and Bruce Pearl wasn't the only one, but around that time, what was your best shot? Your best shot was a wide open layup. Your second best shot was a contested layup where you get fouled, whether or not you make it. Your third best shot was a three-pointer. That mid-range crap was out the door. You didn't want any of that because statistically, that's kind of how they figured it out. I thought that was really cool. Basketball coverage is brought to you by Zach England of Best of Brock. Zach England of Best of Brock, the absolute best personal injury attorney in Chattanooga. I'm going to tell you, the insurance companies, they're going to buck up and they're going to have some fantastic attorneys. Well, Zach England of Best and Brock can stand toe to toe with those. So again, I thought a great showing by Kentucky in response, but I just don't see how you don't expect that with all they have gone through. That really surprised me. I thought Tennessee was going to roll. You have Kentucky fans calling for John Calipari's head, which I think is way ahead of schedule. And I just the more and more I look at John Calipari, the more I think in this day and age, he has all the leverage till he's 90 years old if he wants, because he's going to bring in guys that are exciting. They might up and win one. And when I say leverage, I'm not talking about at Kentucky. They may get sick of it. They may want to go after somebody else. But who could you go hire right now that's better than John Calipari? He's free throws, one missed free throw away by Derrick Rose of winning 2 championships, one at Memphis, which isn't easy to do. The amount of talent he's brought into Kentucky, and he has won a championship. This would be a way different conversation, Caleb, if we were talking about he hadn't won even one, okay? If we're sitting at 0, but he has won one. So it's difficult. It would be really difficult for me as a Kentucky administrator to say, hey, I think we'll replace this John Calipari guy who gets all this fun talent each and every year. But Kentucky's a different fan base. How would you put yourself in that position if you're Mitch Barnhart, the athletic director there?
Yeah, that's a tough situation to be in, more so than anything, because I think college basketball The only thing that makes a job a better job is the pay. Because quite honestly, I don't think you're right. Calipari could go anywhere and he could recruit 5-star talent and they'll come there and he'll be as good as he is at Kentucky. I don't think that it's not like college football. It's not like college football where you'd rather coach at Alabama, Georgia, or LSU where you can just wake up and get a top 5 recruiting class because there's so much talent in the area. It doesn't really matter where the talent is in college basketball because it's so much more national. I really think the Blue Bloods thing is irrelevant in college basketball, if I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's much more about the coaches. And so you're right. If you fire John Calipari, what great coach would leave the situation they're in to go to Kentucky unless Kentucky just unloads a dump truck of cash that the other school can't compete with?
Well, and everybody can compete with it now because football, to spend in line with the elite programs, you're talking about a coach of $10 million. You're talking about NIL money. You're talking about having facilities. So if you're just school U in wherever and you want to build up a fantastic football program, you're going to have to throw around 9 digits. You're going to have to throw around the hundreds of millions of dollars. For basketball, you can hire a great coach. You can have facilities built. Tennessee did this. They were already a strong program beforehand, but they built the Pratt Pavilion, so there wasn't any comparison from their facilities and other schools. They went ahead and got that stuff done. And, you're investing 15, 20 million extra than you were. I look at Gonzaga. I mean, that is not a mid-major anymore. And when are they considered a blue blood? I mean, at what point, Caleb, if we're doing this show in 10 years, are they a blue blood?
You would think. I mean, I guess because they kind of remind me of the Villanova of the West, and I think Villanova is effectively there with 2 national titles now from Jay Wright before he retired. And I agree. It's funny because it's 15 years ago, when John Calipari left Memphis to go to Kentucky. I know I've been on pretty good authority that FedEx and a bunch of boosters, just came together and tried to pull a dump truck of cash to keep John Calipari at Memphis. And I understand why. But Calipari was just allured to the status of Kentucky and just really couldn't say no to it. Nowadays, if the same thing, Penny Hardaway may not ever be on Calipari's level, but say he starts thriving at Memphis, I don't think he would. Why would he want to leave? And I don't think, why would Mark Few want to leave Gonzaga? You're right. Why would, Kansas is a blue blood, but I'm thinking of recent national champions or recent elite coaches. Why would Rick Barnes want to leave Tennessee? I guess if we're saying that. And why would Bruce Pearl want to leave Auburn outside of the fact that he's living in Auburn? No,
but you're right. I think that there may be 3 or 4 that would pull you away if you have a tie there. If North Carolina, because Rick Barnes has ties there, came calling, yeah, I could see that. But, Kansas, Duke, some of those other blue blood programs, if Calipari left Kentucky and they came calling, I just don't think that has the pull that it used to. I mean, it's kind of like, nobody knew what Tesla was 15 years ago. And now that's the cool car to drive. I think there's a bunch of cool cars to drive right now. And I think that Gonzaga is kind of like the Tesla, and there are going to be other of those programs that are going to crop up. And but at the end of the day, I think Tennessee is one of those top 20, 25 programs that has all the facilities. So, and there may be more. I'm more of a football guy, obviously, but there may be more. But right now, when you talk about the top programs that can spend money and have the exact facilities you want, golly, man. I mean, there's a lot of them. There are a lot of choices. Coaches have an awful lot of leverage, and coaches can ask for $10 million because you're not spending it on a massive indoor 100-yard facility. I mean, it does not take as much money to be a real basketball school as it does football. So if I'm Kentucky, I'm being really, really careful because I don't know that you're ever going to have a run of success. Like when you think of the Leitners and those guys and Bobby Hurley, because they stayed around for 3 years and they were 4 years and they were prominent for 4 years. I don't know that you're ever going to have that or not. So I think it's a reload mentality, and Kentucky fans don't like that. They don't like to hear that, but that's life. The chances that John Calipari is going to bring in 2 or 3 guys, because the perfect mix is have 2 or 3 guys that play 3 or 4 years and stars come in and come out, right? Theoretically, that's what you want. You have some leadership. That ain't the way he recruits. You think he's going to go take some no name from Selma, Kentucky, who might be a 4-year guy? That goes against everything he's done to this point in his career, Caleb.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and to his credit, he's perfected the one and done part of college basketball. But you're right. He's going to be fully committed to it. It's almost the anti-Rick Barnes. I've said for years that Rick Barnes should not recruit one and done players because Rick Barnes isn't as good at meshing one and done guys into his system. I think Tennessee's better when Rick Barnes recruits a bunch of 3-stars and they play together for 3 years because Rick Barnes develops talent so well. Calipari coaches one and dones really well, and he's got a great system. He coaches defense very well. He runs the dribble drive on offense, which for those of you who don't know, that's where every Kentucky offensive play is geared around the guard driving to the basket, and then they make the decision on whether or not to dish it to a big man or kick it out for a 3 or go for the layup. Every single play is a cut to the basket pretty much for the guards at Kentucky, and that's perfect for the players he's recruiting. And you're right, it's not going to change. And you're right. If you're Kentucky and you get rid of Calipari, let's just take Rick Barnes, for example. Okay, we're comparing programs. Kentucky is a blue blood, Tennessee's not. Fine. But if you're Rick Barnes, there's no nominal or marginal pay increase because Tennessee can afford to pay what Kentucky can afford to pay. You can win as much at Tennessee as you can at Kentucky, and you don't have the expectations that you would have at Tennessee. Rick Barnes, what he did at Tennessee, if he did that at Kentucky, he'd be on the hot seat right now. And I'm like, what coach wants that when they have just as good of an infrastructure and could get paid just as much to win where they're at?
Interesting. There are 4 or 5 programs out there right now that want to get serious about basketball because it's the easiest way to generate revenue that are hoping that John Calipari gets fired. That are just kind of sitting on the verge, and some may be in the SEC, some may be in the ACC or Big East, and they've realigned so much you don't know what to call them. But there is a program out there, and he can have the type of effect. Now, it's not going to be as public, but he can have the type of effect that Deion Sanders can have at Colorado. He can expect the big dogs to come rolling in immediately. By the way, I know you cover recruiting a bit. That mostly falls on Caleb Gyro. But have you noticed how many times that Colorado is on the list from some of these kids that you're bouncing around? I mean, I don't put a lot into a top 5 or 7 list, not announced. I'm just saying where they're listed on the individual recruiting services. But I don't think I saw Colorado for about 10 years, and I saw them 5 times this morning preparing for the show.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. And it's, I wonder if that's short-sighted by the kids because of the lure of Deion Sanders, because I think, but maybe it's not. But Dave, you and I know this. You probably know the history better than I do, but a lot of inner workings of Colorado football history that makes it just a bad job. It's made it a bad job in Division I for a long time.
You and I might differ. I think you can dip into Compton. There's a one-way flight there, and I think you can get kids out of Compton if their parents are smart enough to realize they need to get out of Compton. I go way, way back to the Bill McCartney days, and I think you can win there. Maybe that's a discussion we'll have.
I understand the Bill McCartney days, but I was saying the Gary Barton. There was a massive scandal, in the early 2000s with Colorado that we don't really need to fully delve into, but it was a bad one. It was a bad one, and I don't think they've ever recovered from that.
Oh, and then you had Rick Neuheisel was the coach there for a little bit, and he went to UCLA and got fired for betting $20,000 on. It's funny how much things have changed. Now I think coaches are probably allowed to pick up their phone during the game and make side bets. But he got fired. I don't know if you remember this, for actually being in a NCAA basketball pool.
I did not know that.
He bet $20,000 on a pool and kind of fibbed about it, which always makes it worse. Like the Nixon thing, just come clean. If you want to save your job, come clean. The most embarrassing part was when he became an analyst. I said, if you had a bet who will win the championship this upcoming season. He goes, Dave, you might not have heard, but I got in a little bit of trouble for betting, so I'm going to rephrase that for you. And I was like, that's my bad.
It's so funny because I'm very stringent on, like, I don't think you should ever be allowed to bet on the sport you're involved in, but you should be allowed to bet on any other sports you want. So that seems like a unfair scandal on Rick Neisel.
Yeah, it got blown out of proportion. Don't fib about it. If you get in trouble at work, this is Dave's little piece of advice. Don't fib about it. I started getting the itch about buying a house. We're getting ready to move, and I'm bouncing around and looking at houses yesterday, kind of seeing what the market's doing, and I'm thinking to myself, this is stupid. Just wait till you're ready to go and go to andymasonrealestate.com. That's andymasonrealestate.com. About 40 years in that office of experience. That's andymasonrealestate.com. An East Tennessee native, Andy Mason will take care of you, and there are two business tenets. One is he makes sure that you get the best service available. Two, how about the best prices? You can't beat that. Stay tuned. Back in 2 minutes. Taven Jackson cruising on from the Vols. Why that's a good thing. Hang with me.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassy Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassy, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassy's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassy Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here, Viles Automotive on Calhoun Drive. I've been selling cars here in East Tennessee for 27 years. In that time, I've come to realize it's not about the car. It's about you, the customer. So I'm here to take care of you just like family. Good credit, bad credit, you name it, we can get you taken care of. If we don't have it, we can find it for you. We go across the country to get any vehicle that you want. And here at Viles Automotive, we don't believe in fake numbers. We just give you great deals. And as always, we want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Chattanooga, we're at it again. For the 5th year in a row, you voted us best of the best criminal and DUI law firm.
And finalists for best law firm and best personal injury firm.
Thank you for the love, Chattanooga. We won't let you down.
Just a horrendous story coming out of Alabama that I want to get to before the end of the program. Hit that like button, the thumbs up button. It helps us bring more people to the channel. We greatly appreciate that. And I remind you, 2 places in North Knoxville you need to be aware of. Vols Automotive Group is the epicenter of car buying, selling, and service right there on Calhoun Drive in North Knoxville. And then there's Big Orange Phillies, great food, family friendly. They've got darts, billiards. They've got everything you could possibly want there at Big Orange Phillies. They are phenomenal. So before we get to this Alabama murder mystery case, I do want to get kind of your final take on the Taven Jackson thing, because sometimes Caleb and I talk about stuff before the show, and then sometimes I want to have his opinion be fresh and original and not really know which direction he comes from, and that maybe we get to, maybe we agree, maybe we don't. I think we totally agree on this one. I think Taven Jackson saw that Nico can spin it, and I think that he was like, I'm ready to cruise on, because not only am I behind in winning the 2023 job, also behind in whatever happens going forward. So that's I think the writing's on the wall, and I think there's some like Brian Moore, there's some like Taven Jackson, players that fans gravitate to, and that's great, and that's awesome. And you don't want to lose anybody in the portal, right? But losing Taven Jackson, I think, is a good sign for the quarterback room, a good sign for Tennessee moving forward. That sounds like a shot at Taven, and I've heard he's a great kid. That's the way I'm reading that right now. You?
That's exactly how I'm reading it. It's exactly how I'm reading it. So much so that if Nico made that much of an impact working with the scout team in December, which we both think he did, you're now all of a sudden maybe Joe Milton is not like the complete lockstep to start next year. Heibel said there was going to be open competition. I didn't really believe him. I thought he was sold on Milton. Jaru has talked about how it seems like he is because he's using Milton for recruiting purposes. But if Nico's that good, it's Dave. Help me reminisce with me on this. This reminds me of 2004, right after Casey Clausen left. All the thought was that CJ Leak was going to be the starter, and then the first day of fall camp, Fulmer's like, nope, it's going to be either Eric Ainge or Brent Schaefer. They're just that good. A part of me feels like that had more like Fulmer never really wanted to start CJ Leak, whereas Heupel wants to start Joe Milton.
Well, they wanted Chris. So if it had been 50-50, and sometimes it is, people think, no, that's a starter, no doubt. How could you make that mistake? Sometimes it really is 50-50. I think if they thought that they could have trotted CJ Leak out there, it was the year before when James Banks had the runaround game in Athens and almost won, right?
Yeah, 2 years. That was 2002.
Okay. So let's go back to that point, and here's what they thought of CJ Leak. So they didn't think CJ Leak could play at the SEC level. That's why they had the James Banks runaround offense. Well, at the time, Chris Leak's parents and Chris Leak were sitting in the stands at Athens watching this, and that was the very moment that he was not coming to Tennessee because they went with him instead of CJ Leak, which would have been the more conventional way of going after him. And by the way, you mentioned that Miami win down there as one of Philip Fulmer's best coaching jobs. I thought that one of his best coaching jobs was actually that day in Athens to have the James Banks running around, kind of Lamar Jackson type of offense, and that kept them in the game. And it ended up being a one-score game very late. I think Georgia won by 4 points. So I think that said everything you needed to know. So at that point, you want to keep CJ Leak around for depth. You want to keep him around in case you have to go to him. But Philip Fulmer is always going to he's going to err on the side of talent, and that's Eric Ainge. Eric Ainge can obviously spin it, could at the time. Big, strong-armed NFL prototype quarterback. And then you had Brent Schaefer that could run around and do some things and still had a great arm. So I think it really goes back to they kind of strung CJ Leak along to be a backup even headed into that Ainge Schaefer season. That was always my thought of it. I never thought that he would go into that season as the starter. I just never got the feeling that they would find somebody else. And unless Schaefer and Ainge ended up being dodo birds, which one was, unless they both just absolutely blew up and were horrible, I don't think CJ Leak was ever going to start a real game at Tennessee in which there wasn't an injury in front of him that opened the door. And I don't think he did he?
No, and the crazy part is Ainge and Schaefer both got season-ending injuries that year, and then they went with Rick Clausen, not even CJ Leak. And
that was 2005, correct?
No, 2000. Remember that the quarterback controversy with Ainge and Clausen was 2005 because Clausen finished out the year in 2004. And Clausen finished out the year because Schaefer got hurt against South Carolina, and then Ainge got hurt against Notre Dame, I believe. And so they had to finish Clawson started the SEC championship game when they lost to Auburn that year, and then was MVP of the Cotton Bowl, I think.
Oh golly, man! The press box with no heat. I'll always remember about that Cotton Bowl. And Jimmy Himes, congratulations to him on his retirement. But I still remember us walking across the ice, and I think he busted once because it was an ice storm. I took all spring clothes to Dallas. Didn't you think it would be warm? Got there the first day, stood there at SMU's campus for practice. And there's something about a breeze that comes through in a place with no mountains, and it just cuts. I could feel my skeleton. I mean, it cuts straight to the bone. But no, I think the leak relationship between that administration went south pretty quick, and it was that day in Georgia. So, CJ also was a little bit of a weird bird. He didn't want to be. He just kind of hung around, but it was you weren't sure if he was really fully engaged. Like, he didn't want to do interviews a lot, and I'm not judging that, but kind of felt like he thought he was screwed over, for lack of a better term. And maybe he was, but I think the way he responded to it wasn't good. But I know they fell in love with Ainge and Schaefer and their physical ability. And I mean, golly, looking back at it, who couldn't? By the way, I watched the old Colonel Reb is Crying. Do you remember that?
Is that the Ed Orgeron, like?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was showing. So Ja Rowe, who is our recruiting coordinator / reporter / puts it all together, he is from LSU. So I found the one where Mike Tiger is crying, which is a backup. But still, the funniest part of that Ed Orgeron thing. This is how highly Brent Schaefer was thought of. So he transfers to Ole Miss, has to sit out his year. And Ed Orgeron gets the job, and he just up and says there will be no quarterback position, that Brent Schaefer will be the starter. He said it in January. No coach has ever said that. They just took over a program. It's so bizarre. That was after the meeting in which he ripped his shirt off and told his entire team, I can take any one of you right now. Anybody wants to get into it, come down to the front of the stage. That happened. I swear to you. Ripped his shirt off. But the best part was, in the middle of that song, he goes, oh, football. And then he goes, oh, Brent Schaefer. There was just no question that he was going to be the starter.
I think that was one of the most embarrassing coaching moments ever done, because remember, he said it in January. Brent Schaefer wasn't able to enroll even after fall camp started because he wasn't qualifying academically and he had to deal with some academic issues. And even fall camp starts, Schaefer's still not enrolled, and Orgeron still tells his team, yeah, no, Schaefer's still starting. I've never seen him play.
I know. Academics don't know how he can play. Took a baseball bat to another person on campus, and all of this is like, he's our guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Perfect at Orgeron. And I mean, anybody that has any belief in Ed Orgeron as a coach, leader of men, anything like that, should have just been like, I'm sorry, I think he's the worst coach in SEC history, and he's got a national championship ring. That just shows you how easy of a job LSU is.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a bittersweet, sad list, but worst coaches to win a national championship: Les Miles, Ed Orgeron. Worst coach by far to ever win a Super Bowl: Barry Switzer. Worst quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl, getting up in your neck of the woods:
Trent Dilfer.
And it's not close.
Yeah, no, you're right. The Ravens might have the two worst quarterbacks to ever win a Super Bowl.
They do, but Flacco is at least, he's a step up over Dilfer as a player, though.
Yeah, no, that you're right. That's quite a. Dilfer was. I remember the Ravens that year set a record for most consecutive games without a touchdown. They went like 5 straight games without a touchdown. I was a Titans fan. I'll never forget that time they beat the Titans in the playoffs. Blocked field goal return for a touchdown. Eddie George bobbles a pass because he was scared of getting hit by Ray Lewis. And that's
what year was that?
2000.
Okay. Well, I covered that game. And I will tell you that you've got, with 5 minutes left, you can go down to an NFL sideline, I believe is right. Or maybe it's a 2-minute warning. It's a little bit longer in college, or I think it's longer in the NFL. You can go to the sideline. And I will tell you right then, seeing Ray Lewis move around as big and as fast as he was one of the most intimidating things in terms of an athlete that I've ever seen, being on the sideline. If you're on the sideline and you have a kid that's 12 years old and considering playing football, and you watch an NFL game from the sideline, you will do everything you can to not let your child ever play football. It was and Ray Lewis in particular was a blur. I had trouble keeping my eyes on one person because he was moving so fast. And they had a corner. Was it McAllister?
Chris McAllister.
Yeah. So he looks like a normal sized dude on TV, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He stood next to me with cleats, and it was like I had to take my microphone and stretch my arm all the way up above my head. He was that much bigger than me. And I'm thinking, these dudes are at another level. And that's when the kicker missed the he missed a field goal. What was his
Del
name?
Greco?
Yeah. And we got caught on an elevator together. That was uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, he got cut at the end of that season.
Yeah, I know. I was on the elevator going down with him after he had dressed or up or whatever to the press box. And it was just me and him, and he didn't have any handlers or anything because he was walking dead to the Titans. He didn't want anything to do with him. We hope you find your car in the parking lot. Just get the hell out.
Yeah.
And it was me and him. And I wanted to say something, not out of a reporter style, but I wanted to say something just out of empathy. Like, keep your chin up, Bucky. But what am I supposed to say?
You're nicer than me. I'm sorry. I'm not a fan of NFL kickers that miss easy kicks. That's your job. And
You actually won me over with that. So every kicker should make one in the NFL from, in my opinion, 45 in, every college 30 in.
Yeah.
Is my new rule. And I base that off of you. Craft Treats will take care of your dog's digestive issues. Also, they'll take care of your dog's arthritis issues. Working great for my dog. He can jump back up on the high bed because he's taking chill pills. Chill pills at crafttreats.com. Also, how about social anxiety? They could use a little help with that. That is crafttreats.com. Again, crafttreats.com. Use the promo code Off the Hook. Get 20% off. The promo code Off the Hook. Get 20% off any of their dog treats. Holistic, fantastic, awesome treats. David said, can you imagine at Hooker Bolton when Milton was named number 1 and the hype Taven Jackson had just been signed? Similar circumstances. And David, you probably just gave me a great column idea. Have a fantastic day, everyone. He is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Looking forward to it. This has been a press